change your mind about how excessive this really looks, because it isn't, you know. I just love them. I don't have boats. I don't have more cars. I don't have anything else. This is what I love most.
When you think of Vince Gill, you think of smooth vocals, masterful guitar work, and a reputation as one of country music's class acts. But beneath that easygoing charm lies a man with zero patience for musicians he felt didn't meet his standards.
And at the end of the day, that's all I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to impress anybody. I'm trying to move somebody.
And we're not talking about small-time acts. Gill has thrown harsh words at some of the most iconic names in music history. So why did Vince Gill feel this way? Let's dive into his surprising list. Elton John. Elton John is nothing short of a musical icon. From his glittering debut in the early 1970s, Elton has dazzled audiences around the globe with his unmatched showmanship, rich melodies, and bold fashion sense. With hits like Rocket Man, Tiny Dancer, and Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, he transcended genre and redefined what pop and rock music could be. But Elton's flamboyant style and theatrical performances have raised eyebrows, especially among traditionalists. And for someone like Vince Gill, who holds music as a sacred, roots-based form of expression, Elton's pop persona clashed hard with his philosophy. In a 2001 interview about musical authenticity, Gill remarked, "Some folks light the stage on fire, and some light the heart. It's not the same fire." Those close to him believe it was a reference to performers like Elton, who prioritize spectacle. Vince Gill grew up surrounded by bluegrass, harmony-rich gospel, and western swing. Elton, by contrast, was rock opera, piano flamboyance, and outfits made of feathers and rhinestones. Elton John represents a certain era of pop stardom, one where image and presentation were almost as important as the music itself. He pushed boundaries, embraced theatricality, and broke through every conventional mold. For Gill, who's long championed the idea that country, and music in general, should be rooted in real emotion and musical humility, Elton's stardom was an echo chamber of extravagance, not unwelcome, but unsettling. Over the years, Elton John has experimented with nearly every genre. While fans applauded the range, Gill once said in an interview, "Genre isn't just a sound, it's a life. You can't just visit it on the weekends." Elton and Vince will likely never share a stage, but they exist in parallel universes of musical respect. Both are master craftsmen. Both are beloved. But they embody opposite ends of the artistic spectrum. Elton thrives on spectacle. Gill thrives on sincerity. To Gill, music should feel lived in, not layered in costume. And that's why, even with admiration in his eyes, there's always a slight pause before he applauds. But while Elton brought glamour and grandiosity to the stage, the next artist on our list took things even further, making theatricality a full-time business model and turning the concert stage into a war zone of smoke, fire, and face paint. Gene Simmons. Gene Simmons, known as the fire-breathing co-founder of one of rock's most theatrical acts, Simmons built a band that was bigger than life and far removed from anything Gill would call music. Kiss, formed in 1973, became a juggernaut of arena rock. But it was Gene Simmons' marketing genius that turned the band into a full-blown empire. Action figures, comic books, pinball machines, even Kiss-branded coffins. With a booming bass, booming ego, and booming business sense, Simmons wore the makeup of a demon and built the brand of a mogul. To millions of fans, Kiss was power and fantasy. To Vince Gill, they were the embodiment of everything wrong with showbiz and music. Vince Gill rarely speaks on acts outside his genre, but Simmons crossed his radar more than once, especially when Kiss began making appearances at cross-genre festivals and flirted with Nashville ties. In a 2002 Nashville radio interview, the host asked Gill if he'd ever play with Gene Simmons. Gill shot back, "Only if he takes the clown makeup off and learns a chord that isn't G." It was more than a joke. It was a direct jab at Simmons' entire ethos. Gill wasn't just critiquing his stage makeup, he was dismissing Kiss's legitimacy as musicians. Vince Gill reveres artistry built on humility and precision. His music comes from heartbreak and harmony, played clean, sung earnestly. Simmons, on the other hand, created a persona that fed on loudness and volume. Where Gill used silence and subtlety, Simmons brought pyrotechnics and posturing. Gill once described his ideal show as, quiet enough for people to hear the words. For Gene Simmons, the louder, the better. According to backstage stories from the early 2000s, when a discussion came up at an industry dinner about musicians who crossed over from rock to country, Gill reportedly quipped, "As long as it's not Gene Simmons." Gene Simmons has always seen music as part of a much larger spectacle. His philosophy is unapologetic: give fans a show, give them a brand, and make money doing it. In interviews, Simmons has even claimed that musical skill is secondary to presence and promotion. To Gill, he believes music should first and foremost mean something. So while Simmons might see himself as a master of reinvention, Gill sees someone who abandoned substance in favor of show business. As the years went by, Gill broadened his musical reach, collaborating with Eagles members and even performing rock-tinged material. But Gene Simmons remained a no-go. Their philosophies never aligned. In fact, in a 2014 interview when Simmons said that rock was dead, Gill responded in a separate interview, "Real music never dies. The noise just gets louder." Simmons and Gill are both legends in their own right, but while one built his legacy on fire and makeup, the other built his on heart and honesty. Gill doesn't just dislike Simmons' music, he dislikes what it stands for: image over art, marketing over meaning. And in that quiet judgment, he speaks for many who believe music should be more than a brand. But while Gene Simmons represented the glamorized spectacle Vince Gill found hollow, the next artist brought a more subtle, though no less controversial, disruption: Beyoncé. Few names carry as much weight in modern music as Beyoncé. A powerhouse vocalist, visionary performer, and cultural icon, she's shaped pop, R&B, and even visual media with her bold innovation and fierce independence. With over 20 Grammys, headlining Coachella, and reshaping what it means to be an artist in the 21st century, Beyoncé isn't just an entertainer, she's a movement. But in 2024, with the release of Cowboy Carter, Beyoncé did something that sent a jolt through the spine of Nashville. She entered country music. To some, it was historic, a reclamation of black country roots. To others, a commercial incursion. And to Vince Gill, it was complicated. Gill made some very pointed comments in the months following her country crossover. At a songwriters' roundtable, he was asked about the genre's current trajectory. Gill responded, "It's always exciting when people bring new voices to the table, as long as they know what table they're sitting at." The crowd laughed, but beneath the charm was a familiar undercurrent: protectiveness. Gill has always believed that country music is more than a genre, it's a heritage. Beyoncé's Cowboy Carter was musically ambitious. It fused country instrumentation with R&B phrasing, pop polish, and cinematic scale. She brought steel guitar, banjo, even Willie Nelson voiceovers, but it was still a Beyoncé album. Glossy, grand, unapologetically curated. Gill's style is rooted in space and simplicity, finger-picked guitars, lyrical humility, songs that bleed without bleeding out. He once said, "The best country songs feel like they weren't written, they were lived." To Gill, music isn't just about incorporating sonic elements, it's about soul, community, and lineage. And while he may respect Beyoncé's talent, the sudden arrival of an international pop icon into country's most sacred hallways may have felt like skipping the line. Shortly after Cowboy Carter was announced, several Nashville insiders reportedly asked Gill in private what he thought. According to one account, he replied, "Well, we'll see if she plays the Bluebird." It was a light comment, but layered. The Bluebird Café, a small venue where songwriters earn their stripes, has long been a rite of passage for serious country artists. It's not about fame, it's about respect. And that's what Gill seemed to be questioning. Does stardom give someone the right to redefine a tradition? Beyoncé's entry into country music wasn't random. It was timely, political, and deeply intentional. With conversations around racial representation in country gaining traction, her album felt like both a statement and a challenge. To many, it was long overdue. Black artists helped build country music, yet were often erased from its history. Beyoncé's move was seen by fans and critics as a reclamation. But to someone like Vince Gill, who came up playing Opry stages and small-town bars, there's always been a tension between country's roots and its reinventions. He may not have questioned her right to make a country album, but he may have questioned whether the industry should change its definition of country to fit her. Since the release of Cowboy Carter, Beyoncé has won over many in Nashville. She's collaborated with genre legends, played country-centric events, and brought new fans to the genre. But for traditionalists like Gill, the conversation hasn't ended. At a recent awards show, when a journalist asked what he thought of the genre's growing diversity, Gill paused before saying, "Country music has room for everyone, as long as they respect the room." Beyoncé and Vince Gill may never share a stage, but their worlds have now intersected. She represents the future of crossover, genre-defying creativity. He represents a past built on staying put and singing the truth. Neither one is wrong, but the collision between them exposed a rift that continues to shape the soul of country music. And while Beyoncé sparked conversation by stepping into country from the outside, the next artist Vince Gill clashed with came armed with patriotism and provocation from deep within the genre's own backyard. And when he stepped forward, the applause came fast, but so did the backlash. Paul McCartney. There are few names in the music world more universally adored than Paul McCartney. As a Beatle, a solo artist, and one half of Lennon-McCartney, he's responsible for shaping modern music as we know it. From Hey Jude to Maybe I'm Amazed, McCartney's catalog is bursting with melody, optimism, and innovation. But for all his acclaim, McCartney's post-Beatles journey has taken him through many genres and into collaborations that left traditionalists like Vince Gill scratching their heads. While Gill has never publicly attacked McCartney, insiders suggest that he's been critical of how McCartney approaches genre blending and cultural legacy, especially when it comes to the way he re-enters spaces like Americana or country for quick projects or collaborations. Gill is no stranger to reverence. He honors those who paved the way, but he also values staying in your lane when it comes to genre purity. At a 2017 Americana conference, after McCartney released a country-tinged duet with a pop star, Gill said, "It's great when legends collaborate, but sometimes it feels like they're just checking a box." He never named Paul directly, but the timing was suspiciously aligned. McCartney's genius lies in his elasticity. He can write a love song or a synth-pop anthem, and he's constantly experimenting. To Gill, who treats music as a sacred form tied to emotional truth and cultural roots, stays grounded in a sound he's refined over decades. That consistency is his pride and his lens for judging others. At a charity gala in 2018, both Gill and McCartney were part of the performer list. When asked backstage if he was excited to hear Paul play, Gill reportedly said, "I love the old stuff, just hope he doesn't try to rap again." It got a laugh, but there was a chill beneath the joke. Gill wasn't just talking about style, he was pointing to a perceived loss of musical identity. McCartney's approach reflects a modern, boundaryless view of music. He sees genre as fluid, meant to be bent and broken. Gill comes from a world where genre is identity, where country music has rules, traditions, and a history that must be honored. So when McCartney dips in and out of American roots music, even with good intentions, Gill and those like him see it as lacking sincerity, not because McCartney isn't talented, but because he hasn't lived that world the same way. Gill's comments about drive-by collaborations and musical tourism have continued over the years. Again, never directly naming McCartney, but often surfacing after another genre hop by the former Beatle. To Gill, musical experimentation is fine, but only if it's born of genuine connection, not curiosity or PR strategy. McCartney and Gill represent two very different philosophies. One believes in endless expansion, the other in deep, focused authenticity. They're both legends, they're both craftsmen, but Gill's quiet side-eyes make one thing clear: reverence doesn't mean blind acceptance. Even giants can be questioned. And while McCartney's artistic curiosity raised eyebrows for Vince Gill, the next name brought in a different kind of controversy: loud, wild, and unapologetically rowdy. It was less about melody and more about the mayhem that followed. Kid Rock. Born Robert Ritchie in Detroit, Michigan, Kid Rock built his early career on a fusion of rap and rock, with breakout albums like Devil Without a Cause and The History of Rock. With his gravel-throated delivery, wild man image, and rebel without a cause attitude, he was never about finesse. He was about flipping off the establishment while turning the volume to 11, but by the mid-2000s, something shifted. Kid Rock put down the turntables, picked up an acoustic guitar, and started flirting heavily with country and southern rock. His 2008 hit all summer long mashed up Lynyrd Skynyrd and Warren Zevon into a retro feel-good anthem that suddenly found a home on country radio. For fans, it was a surprising reinvention. For critics, a calculated pivot. But for Vince Gill, it was a trespass, a bold swagger into sacred ground. Unlike some of his other critiques, Gill never publicly named Kid Rock. He didn't have to. His discontent with rock's brand of country showmanship was expressed through repeated, subtle but sharp comments. In a 2016 interview with Rolling Stone Country, Gill was asked about the blurring lines in modern country. He answered, "If you spend more time telling people you're country than actually playing country music, maybe you're not." The timing wasn't random. Kid Rock had just performed at the CMT Awards. Vince Gill approaches music like it's a craft passed down from generations. Every lyric matters. Every note should ring with purpose. Kid Rock's music is a Molotov cocktail of influence, part Southern pride, part arena rock bombast. To his credit, he's genre fluid. But to Gill, he wasn't blending traditions. He was hijacking them. Gill writes songs about mercy and memory. Kid Rock sings about beer and backlash. And when it comes to stage presence, Gill stands still with his guitar. Kid Rock, often shirtless, storms around like he's headlining a monster truck rally. Kid Rock's country reinvention wasn't just musical. It became political. He embraced Southern imagery, began attending and performing at Republican events, and leaned hard into culture war commentary. His image shifted from rock star to rural firebrand, with all the swagger of a country outlaw, but none of the lineage. To some, he embodied a new kind of American folk hero. To others, a walking caricature. For Vince Gill, who values grace and sincerity, Rock's approach seemed more like provocation than passion. Kid Rock has only doubled down on his identity. He's released country-flavored albums, collaborated with Nashville artists, and continues to draw massive crowds at festivals and rallies. Gill, by contrast, has leaned further into legacy, recording gospel albums, playing with the Eagles, mentoring young songwriters. He doesn't chase trends, he tends to the roots. The gap between the two has never narrowed. Vince Gill has never publicly feuded with Kid Rock. But their artistic paths don't cross for a reason. Where Gill sees music as service, Rock uses it for statement. Where Gill offers comfort, Rock courts chaos. And though Gill might never say it out loud, his choices, in collaborations, performances, and commentary, make it clear he doesn't buy what Kid Rock is selling. But while Kid Rock turned country into a stage for rebellion, the next name on our list represents perhaps the most surreal conflict of all: Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift started her career as a teenage country prodigy, strumming heartbreak into 3-minute confessionals. With early hits like Tim McGraw and Teardrops on My Guitar, she quickly won over Nashville with her poetic honesty and youthful charm. But as she grew, so did her ambition. And soon, Taylor left country behind for full-blown pop superstardom. Today, Swift is a global icon with a fiercely loyal fan base, multiple Grammy wins, and a cultural presence rivaled by few. Her genre-spanning catalog, from 1989 to folklore, showcases both reinvention and resilience. But for traditionalists like Vince Gill, that very reinvention may be part of the problem. While Vince Gill has praised young songwriters in general, he's also made a number of statements that critics believe were indirect shots at Swift's crossover path. At a country radio convention in 2014, shortly after Swift's official move to pop, with 1989, Gill said, "Country music doesn't need tourists. It needs lifers. No names, no drama." But to those paying attention, the message was unmistakable. Vince Gill values legacy, lineage, and roots. He's devoted his life to preserving country music's emotional depth. Taylor Swift, by contrast, built her career on narrative but evolved into a pop culture titan who continually shifts her sound, style, and persona. Where Gill plays to heal, Swift performs to conquer. To Gill, leaving country isn't just a personal choice, It's a statement, and while he may respect Swift's talent, the way she transitioned genres and kept a foot in Nashville only when convenient likely rubbed him the wrong way. Taylor Swift represents the modern artist who defies genre labels. She's empowered millions, reshaped fan engagement, and challenged the music industry itself. But for Vince Gill, country music isn't just one of many paths. It's home. Her move to pop marked a shift in how Nashville sees its own stars. Is country music a stepping stone, or is it a lifelong calling? Gill's view clearly leans toward the latter. As Swift has continued to evolve, releasing indie folk albums, re-recording her old masters, and selling out stadium tours, Gill has remained consistent in his approach. Slow, steady, and unshakably grounded. In a 2022 interview, when asked about the trend of country artists trying on new identities, Gill replied, "The real ones don't try anything on. They wear it every day." Taylor Swift and Vince Gill are both symbols of excellence, but they represent two entirely different philosophies. Swift is about transformation. Gill is about tradition. He may never say he dislikes her, but when it comes to defining what country music is and who it belongs to, Vince Gill makes his stance clear. The door may be open, but it shouldn't be a revolving one. Which names surprised you the most? Did you expect someone else on this list? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe for further updates.